G'day guys, how are we? Welcome to the review of a big weekend of heavyweight boxing. Not quite sure what to make of one of them. Of course, I'm referring to Tyson Fury, Francis Ngannou, and the Justice HUNI, Anthony TABITI fights today. Now I know for probably people watching overseas, the HUNI and TABITI fight probably wasn't high on the list of priorities for the weekend, but for us Aussies down here, it was a significant fight. Justice HUNI making his American debut, so we'll get to that one probably second. But let's start with Fury Ngannou. To be honest with you, I'm not quite sure what to make of the fight. Now, like a lot of you out there, there's a lot of things, even though it's only 3 hours or something, 2 or 3 hours after the fight itself, a lot of stuff on social media, a lot of people saying Ngannou won, a lot of people saying Fury won but looked pretty ordinary. I'm a little bit in between, to be honest. As I said, I'm not quite 100% sure. Look, I've watched the fight back. I didn't actually watch it live, watched it about an hour afterwards. Yeah, look, I think what we can all agree on is that as far as Tyson Fury goes, it was a shocking performance. And whether you think he won or not, I'll get into that in a second. But as far as the actual performance itself goes, I think Tyson Fury is obvious that he hadn't trained, obvious that he hadn't taken the fight seriously, and obviously he was just there. I don't know whether it was a payday or one thing. I probably suspect what's happened is that he, the December 23 fight with Usyk's apparently signed, sealed, and delivered. I've got a feeling because he hasn't been in the ring for a little while, Tyson Fury, he's decided to take this fight. It's a big money fight. In his eyes, it would have been an easy fight, and he would have been, I think, just thinking outside, looking in, but he was looking at this fight as almost part of his training camp for the Usyk fight. Now, I don't think he expected anywhere near what he got from Francis Ngannou. Now, look, again, I must admit I know nothing about Ngannou. And I didn't watch the fight live, by the way, because I wasn't going to pay the, $40 here in Australia. I know it's a lot cheaper than what a lot of people overseas paid for it, but I still wasn't willing to pay the $40. I watched it on YouTube, as I said, an hour after the fact. But I knew he was the former UFC heavyweight champion, but again, I don't watch a lot of UFC. Watch some of the big cards, but I'm not a regular watcher of it. Doesn't really excite me that much, except for the really big ones. But so I didn't really, like most boxing fans out there, and probably a lot of UFC fans, to be honest, didn't really give him a shot at all. And as I said, I think Fury would be looking at this fight as a tune-up for the Usyk fight, which is 8 weeks later, which is quite unbelievable when you think about it, that in this day and age where the top fighters of the world fight once a year, sometimes once every 2 years, 18 months, whatever it might be. And I think he was using it to coincide with his camp. And I think it was blatantly obvious from right at the start. He looked out of shape. I'm not quite sure what the weights were in comparison to his previous fights. I probably should have looked at that, but I will after I've done this video. But it was painfully obvious that he hadn't taken the fight seriously. Timing was off. Just his range was off, his distance, pretty much everything was off. And I think he just thought he would go out there and play with Ngannou for as long as he wanted to and then put him away, probably a little bit like Floyd Mayweather did with Conor McGregor. But the big difference in this fight to the Mayweather-McGregor fight is that Ngannou really came to fight, and he's obviously a banger. Now, again, I don't know much about him, but from what I've seen and read and whatever else, that he's a big banger. Won a lot of his UFC fights by knockout. So I don't think Tyson Fury expected him to come and try and win this fight. Now, I'm sure there was talks. I'm not saying it was staged or anything like that, but I'm sure there were talks about, well, Francis, we're going to give you a shot. You're going to get the 10-round fight against the heavyweight champion. You're going to get a massive payday. You're going to get all the attention, everything that you're after. But I just don't think it was discussed about where Ngannou's role in this fight actually was, and it almost came back to backfire spectacularly for Tyson Fury. And as I was watching it, I mean, I knew the result beforehand, so it wasn't so bad. But I could just imagine Alexander Usyk sitting ringside for the fight and thinking, what the hell? You know, he's got tens or hundreds of millions of dollars. I'm not quite sure, but it'd be a lot of money at stake for the Fury fight. And I think he would have had his heart in his mouth for most of the fight. So, but onto the fight itself. Look, as I said, I thought Fury started very, very slowly. I know he came out and threw the big right hand early, but as I said, I don't think he expected NGANNOU to be there to win the fight. And NGANNOU, right from the word go, even though he's a little bit sloppy, even though he's a little bit amateurish in some ways, he was there to fight, and he was looking to take Fury out. And it took him to the third round. Obviously, he shocked Fury with that big knockdown in the third with a left hook. I think it was more of a glancing blow. I don't think Fury was actually hurt at any stage. I think it was just sort of caught him unawares, not balanced, and down he went. But the look of shock horror on Fury's face, and I must admit, I'm not quite sure whether even NGANNOU was surprised by what he did, because if you look at after he knocked Fury down, there was no follow-up. There was no going for the knockout. I'm not quite sure whether one, he knew that Fury was hurt, or not hurt, or whatever, or two, that he was thinking, hang on, even I know this is not the way this fight's supposed to go, so maybe I'll just sit back and hopefully, you know, or our third, hopefully, geez, he's not going to now fire up and try and take me out. I don't know, but if you look at it, he didn't try and follow up. Fury, I think, as I said, I don't think he was overly hurt. I think he's cagey enough that he would have found a way anyway, but he got through the round. I thought he picked it up in the fourth and fifth. And a lot of those, I'll just backtrack a bit, a lot of those early rounds too were very even. You had NGANNOU, who looked, as I said, a little bit amateurish, not quite sure the whole boxing setup and what to expect, and Fury, who just looked totally out of sorts. But after the knockdown, fourth and fifth, I thought Fury started to pick it up a little bit, but neither one of them, if you really look at the fight, were landing any meaningful punches apart from that. None at all. A lot of glancing punches, you know, a lot of punches just falling short, glancing off the head, whatever it might have been, but it was just a very, very ordinary fight. And as the rounds went on, I must admit, I thought Fury would pick it up and finish strongly, but I'm not sure whether he was gassed or whatever it might be. I think that was probably the reason. His conditioning obviously wasn't there. It was blatantly obvious he hadn't had a proper camp. So, and then NGANNOU gassed as the fight went on as well. Didn't really have enough in the tank to really go after Fury. And I just kept thinking, even though I did know the result, of course, that if I had been watching it live, if NGANNOU had just had a little bit more in the tank to really pick it up in the 7th, 8th, 9th rounds, I got a feeling he could have got Tyson Fury out of there, but he was exhausted and he just didn't throw enough. I mean, as for the decision itself, I thought it was really close. I'm probably going to break the trend here and say that I did think that Fury did enough, even with the knockdown, because NGANNOU, even though I was so impressed with what he did, I still don't think he was busy enough. He landed enough effective punches, apart from that third round, of course. And I just thought Fury, even though it's the worst I've ever seen Tyson Fury ever, I thought he just picked and prodded and poked and, you know, just did enough just to squeak past the rounds and do enough. And look, I'm not going to argue with anyone that said NGANNOU won, because that's how bad Fury was and how good NGANNOU was. But I just think the talent gulf between them should have been so massive that it shouldn't have mattered. But end of the day, Fury, just by his lack of preparation, really brought NGANNOU in the fight. And of course, NGANNOU's will to win, which again, I don't think anyone really counted on. So therefore, look, for me, as I said, I probably gave Fury 6 of the rounds, I suppose. And if you're taking the knockdown, brings it back to a 1-point ball game, which I think was the end result anyway. But yeah, I think, as I said at the start, I think we can all agree it was a real sad day for boxing. Sure, there's a lot of UFC fans out there saying, see, we told you that UFC is number one and our guys can beat your guys. I don't really get involved in all that. I have respect for all fighters, no matter what art form or you know, martial art that they do. But just as far as the boxing itself, you've got the heavyweight champion of the world, or a variation, or you know, part of the heavyweight champion of the world. Of course, Usyk's got the other half. I just thought it was very, very embarrassing for the sport of boxing that Fury would turn up in the condition that he did. But on the flip side, I think you can probably also be, you know, very complimentary of NGANNOU, that he didn't realise he was in a circus event and a tune-up event and a training camp, sparring session, whatever you might want to call it, that Fury thought he was in. And I just thought NGANNOU, you know, gained a lot of fans today by his effort. But as I said, I don't think he quite did enough to win. because he just didn't do enough. He just didn't do enough. Not that Fury did a lot either, but he's got enough boxing experience that he was able just to do enough, just to win the rounds, finish a little bit busier, land the couple of punches that he needed to land a punch just to win the rounds. And but it was by no means a clear-cut performance. And as I said, for me, it was just an embarrassing day for Tyson Fury and boxing itself. So what happens now? I think it's blatantly obvious that if he turns up in that shape against Usyk, and Usyk wins, it's a no-brainer. I, however, don't think this Tyson Fury will turn up to fight Usyk. And one thing I actually didn't say earlier, a reason why I think Fury struggled so much with NGANNOU, is I just don't think he knew how to read NGANNOU, because you've got to remember this is NGANNOU's first boxing fight. Now, I know he's the UFC champion or former UFC champion, had a lot of fights there, but you know, so really, you know, you're either an elite fighter or you're not. But having said that, Fury's used to fighting the best heavyweight boxers in the world, and when you get someone in there that doesn't quite do things the way an elite boxer does it, it can really upset your rhythm, upset your anticipation, whatever you might want to call it. But I just think one of the reasons why Fury struggled so much is he just didn't know how to read NGANNOU, who was just so unpredictable and didn't fight the way a normal elite heavyweight boxer would, and it just threw Fury off. And you throw in that the lack of preparation, lack of mental preparation as well, not just physical. So I think you tie all that in together, that it was a recipe for disaster, and he should count himself very, very lucky that he got through that fight. But get onto the Usyk fight, as I said, if he turns up like that, I think Usyk beats him, but I just don't think we're going to get that. That's if it happens on December 23rd. I'm still to be convinced. I know the contracts are signed, still delivered, but for a fighter of Fury's caliber to back up 8 weeks after this fight, I'll believe it when I see it. I hope I'm wrong and they do get it on, but I think if they do happen to actually fight in December 23rd or on December 23rd, I think you'll see a hell of a lot of difference in Tyson Fury's preparation, mental and physical. And I don't think you're going to see the mediocre performance that he put in today. So, well, let's hope so anyway. But I think Usyk at ringside would have been licking his lips about what he saw. But time will tell. So on to the other fight of today, Justice HUNI with a unanimous 10-round decision over Anthony TABITI. I thought it was a really, really good performance from Justice HUNI. I think he went in there to make a statement. TABITI is no slouch. So if you're a fan out there wondering, was it an easy kill for Justice HUNI? Absolutely not. You only had the one loss in a world title fight back in 2019. At one stage, you had the backing of the Mayweather Promotions banner, so they must have seen something in him. He still trains at the Mayweather gym, not with one of the Mayweather trainers, but I can't remember who his trainer was, but they do train out of the Mayweather gym. So to be in an elite environment like that all the time, you've got to be an elite fighter. And I just think what went against him is I just don't think, like a lot of international fighters do when they fight Aussie fighters going over there, I just don't think they count on the Aussies who just turn up, they're always well conditioned, and they come to fight. And that's what Justice HUNI showed, like, you know, whether it be Stevie Spark or George Kambosos or whatever you might want to call it, that they get over there and they're always well prepared and they turn up to fight. And I think quite aware or comfortable or prepared for the work rate that he was going to get from Justice HUNI. You could see the Philly shell type of style that he adopted. It just wasn't built for the style of Justice HUNI. And you know, with that style, they like to step, they like to keep the range, they like to pick you off, they like to set you up for the counter shots. And when you got Justice HUNI, a heavyweight, mind you, a big guy who fights at a middleweight's pace, it's always going to upset someone like TABITI, who just likes to, you know, like Floyd did, but Floyd was obviously 10 levels above TABITI. But yeah, they like to have things their own way, set the shots up, give themselves room, that peekaboo or the Philly shell type of style. And I just don't think he was prepared for what Justice HUNI brought as far as his work rate went and the volume of punches. And I think by the end of the fight, he was exhausted, was TABITI. And look, I think the scorecards, I think it was 100-90 every round of Justice HUNI. I don't think that was quite the case. And the other two judges, I think, might have given TABITI 1 round or 2 rounds. I probably gave him 2, maybe 3 rounds, but I just thought it was a really top-notch performance by Justice HUNI. You got to remember he would have been super keen to impress. Hadn't been in the ring for about a year, I think it was. And he really turned up to put on a performance, and he did. I thought he handled the situation really well. He handled the style of TABITI really well. When TABITI landed a couple of good punches, he came back with 5 or 6 of his own and really did whatever he needed to. And I just thought it was a real sign that Justice HUNI is going to be a real problem for any top heavyweight out there. And you've got to remember, he's only had 8 fights. He's still only a very, very young guy. And I've got a feeling in 3 or 4 years' time, or maybe even earlier, get another 6 or 7 fights or 8 fights under his belt, this guy's going to be right up the top as far as the heavyweights goes. And who knows, he could rival Jai Apatai with what he's doing in the cruiserweight division at the moment. So really, really impressed by Justice HUNI. As I said, it's not easy to go to, not just America, he went to Mexico, so even harder to go down there. Probably wouldn't have had a lot of people in the audience to supporting him, so he's got to try and get himself up for that. He had a very, very good opponent in front of him, and I just thought he handled the situation really, really well. Very mature performance. I thought the whole build up to it, didn't allow himself to get caught up in any trash talking, because that's not really his style. He does his talking with his fists, and I thought he just did a very, very good job of just winning the rounds, getting through. He took a few shots. Yes, he's got a lot of stuff to work on, but again, he's had 8 fights. And hasn't been in the ring for a year. So by all accounts, he's looking to fight again in December. I hope that's the case. I think he's the type of fighter that needs to fight regularly, and I wouldn't mind seeing him have 4 or 5 fights, or at least 4 fights next year in 2024, just to get himself up around the mark of the ratings. He is already rated in the top 15 by 1 or 2 of the organisations, so you never know. But I just think eventually, I think he's going to go right past the likes of the Joe Joyces and Dubois and these types of guys. I just think he's got that much ability. So yep, as I said again, a very, very impressive performance by Justice HUNI. I think he might have been a little bit disappointed he didn't get the knockout, but at the end of the day, TABITI was a very, very good quality opponent. And obviously, again, from that Mayweather gym, no slouch. So, and the other thing is, you've got to remember too, right from the very first fight, bar 1 or 2 that he's had in his 8-fight career, they've all been pretty credible type of opponents. So I can understand, or I think fans have got to understand that it's not that he can't punch, it's just that he's coming up against quality guys, pretty often. So, so let's see what's next for Justice. Hopefully, again, as I said, he gets that December fight, and then he has a big year next year, injury-free. He's had a lot of illness and injury problems over the journey. Let's hope he gets a bit of a break on all that now, and now the Tasman Fighters crew can guide him along with Matchroom Boxing, of course, can get him some big fights, some exposure overseas, maybe get him to England for a couple of fights as well, and who knows where Justice HUNI might be in another couple of years. So that's about it for the review. What did you think? Make sure you put it in the comments below. I'm sure there'll be a lot of feedback as far as the Fury and NGANNOU fight goes, but all opinions are welcome, and that's what the comment section's for. So thanks again, and I hope you enjoyed the review, and we'll catch you next time.